Good morning. Today is November the 16th, 2023. I hope everybody has been having a good day so far and the day as a whole will turn out well. Every day of the year, things happen. Some days, more things happen than others. And as you know, I'm very fond of dates and anniversaries. The day of November 16th, I can point out 4 years in which something very important took place. I'm going to begin with the year 1982. On that day, I was at the time working at Terrell State Hospital, a psychiatric facility where I was a social worker. I was living in Kaufman, which is 12 miles from Terrell, and I was serving as the pastor of the Macedonia African Methodist Episcopal Church. I served as pastor of Macedonia from 1979 until 1987. But what I'm going to talk about happened at a hospital in Terrell, but not at the one hospital where I worked. There at the time were two regular hospitals, both of which have since closed. One was Terrell Community Hospital on 34, and another not far from the downtown area, which was Terrell Colonial Hospital. It was this Colonial where I went under the knife for the last time. I haven't, by the grace of God, I haven't had to have any kind of surgery since. November 16th, 1982, I had surgery for a deviated nasal septum, which was successful. It was performed by the late Dr. James Anthony. Dr. Anthony, it's my understanding, what he did, he practiced medicine in Dallas for many years, and he had bought some property down in Van Zant County, a community called Wills Point, and Terrell is in Kaufman County, and Wills Point is the adjacent county to the east. And he moved down to his home place there at Wills Point and was going to set up an office there. Then he learned that Wills Point didn't have a hospital. So he put his office in Terrell, and he was very well known, very well respected ear, nose, and throat specialist. And the experience I had with that surgery, it reminded me of having a tooth pulled. It was under local anesthesia, I believe they call it. They had everything deadened. I could hear them working, but I couldn't feel anything. I had entered the hospital. Back in those days, people stayed in the hospital longer than they do now. November 15th, that evening, I was admitted to the hospital. And then on November 16th, that morning, I had surgery. And it wouldn't be until the following Friday, 16th, 17th, 16th, 17th, 8th. That would have been November 19th. I was discharged from the hospital. I didn't have any period of disability because I was able to preach at Macedonia the next Sunday, and I was able to go back to work at Terrell State Hospital the following Monday. So everything worked out fine. Fast forward 20 years, on November 16, 2002, a lot of things had happened during that 20-year period. We had moved back to my hometown of Waco, and I had taught at Paul Quinn College and some other schools. And I acquired my PhD from Baylor University. It's a PhD in world religions. I got that on May 13th, 1995. And we were back in the Metroplex by then. And I had completed my third year as the pastor of Forest Hill AME Church in Fort Worth. I told Bishop McKinley Young I wanted to move. I didn't want to go back to Forest Hill. And on the night of November 15th, when I left the planning meeting, things were still up in the air. I didn't know where I was going to be serving, but the bishop knew I wanted to move. And I thought I'd probably be going somewhere in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. However, Reverend Albert Moore presiding elder of the North District, as they called it at the time, in the Northeast Texas Conference, suggested that I go to Wayman Chapel, Ennis. And so I thought it over for a little bit and told me I'll go to Ennis. And so Bishop Young appointed me to Wayman Chapel, Ennis. And so that was November 16th of 2002. And that was a Saturday. And the following day, I delivered my first sermon as pastor of Wayman Chapel. Nobody, not even me, thought that or even envisioned the idea that I would be staying at Ennis 14 years, but I did. I remained there until November 16th. November 19th of 2016, when I was appointed to Bethel AME Church, Corsicana, where I continue to serve. Well, and it was later that I checked my records from 1982 to find out when exactly that surgery occurred. And I didn't realize that I got my move to the church in Ennis on the 20th anniversary of my surgery in Terrell. Ennis and Kaufman are like 16 or 20, there's 26 miles between Ennis and Kaufman and 12 more miles to Terrell. And I fast forward to 2012. I had figured out when the surgery occurred, and it was on November 16th, 2002. And I went back to Terrell. At the time, I was living in Ennis and pastoring Wayman Chapel, and I was also teaching at a couple of community colleges. And I wanted to go by then the Terrell Community Hospital had closed. Actually, in the meantime, the name had been changed to Medical City of Terrell, but it was just an abandoned building at the time. And from what I understand, it's still that way today. But I went to the site where I'd had surgery 30 years earlier, and I did some other things while I was in Terrell. I went by and visited with Dr. B.D. Beal, a psychiatrist with whom I had worked and become fairly good friends during that time at Terrell. And Dr. Beal has passed away since then, but had a good visit with him and his wife and had prayer with them, and I always enjoyed our visits we had when we worked together, and later when I visited with him at his home. I did some research on genealogy at the Terrell Public Library, and I had lunch at one of my favorite eating places, Pop's Fried Chicken in Terrell, with two Masonic brothers. One was Harold Wilson, a Prince Hall Mason, and a retired juvenile probation officer who lives in Terrell. And the other was Cliff Cameron, a white Mason who was living in Kemp at the time. He had a blog called the Cryptic Rite about the Royal and Select Masters Council of the York Rite. At the time, Prince Hall in Texas had what they call the Red House, the Royal Arts Chapter, and the Black House, the Knights Templar Commandery. But they didn't have the Purple House, which is in between the two, the Royal and Select Masters. And Cliff was wanting them to bring the Prince Hall Masons to have the Royal and Select Masters. And he and Harold and I had a good lunch, and we shared about these things. Today, Prince Hall has the Royal and Select Masters in Texas. Sadly, Cliff did not live to see that happen, because it was in 2015, in the month of May. I was blessed to host the Shriners and Daughters and their annual Feast of Thanksgiving at Wayman Chapel. We had a good service, and we also not only had we had a good lunch. We didn't feed them; they fed us, so that turned out to be pretty good. But during the week before that, I decided to call Cliff to invite him to come to this Masonic service, and I got a recording. I left my name and number for him to return my call, and about an hour or so later, I got a call back from that number. It was from Cliff's wife, Jeannie, and I asked to speak to Cliff, and she gave me the sad news that Cliff had passed away. It was on, by then he was already buried in his hometown of Beaumont. And I went to, on May 30th of 2015, I went to a memorial service that was held for him at Cedar Creek Lake Lodge in Gun Barrel City, and it was a wonderful service. And I was glad I was able to stand up and speak, share memories of Cliff, who meant a lot to me. Well, that was a very interesting day, and then that was in 2012. Let's fast forward 8 years, 2020. I had a Zoom interview with a man. I had not met him before. We've since become good friends, Jacob Atawani Nazwa, who is a native of Ghana, West Africa. He serves as a chaplain at Hughley Hospital outside of Fort Worth. And he is the longtime instructor in clinical pastoral education at Terrell State Hospital. And I was I interviewed because I wanted to do CPE, and we had a good interview. And then a few days later, Jacob called me with the very welcome news that I've been accepted into the CPE program. But it was on November 16, 2020, we had that interview. And I started the CPE program in March, I believe it was March 27th of 2021, and then completed the program, the internship, on October 23rd of that year. And after that, I did a year chaplain residency at the Dallas VA Medical Center. So this was some very valuable experiences with clinical pastoral education. I thank God and I thank Jacob for getting me started in this new part of my life journey. And I thank God for step along the way. I wouldn't take nothing for my journey. And I thank God for the events of November 16th of 1982, of 2000, good to get to breathe a little better as a result, to the beginning of my longest pastorate on November 16th of 2002, being able to make a trip down memory lane and visit old friends and have lunch with a couple of friends in 2012, and getting accepted into Terrell State Hospital CPE program in 2020. I wouldn't take nothing for my journey. I thank God for these events of November 16th and past years, and I pray that November 16th, 2023 will be a great day, not only for me, but for everybody at the sound of my voice. God bless each and every one of you. Have a great day.